All right, it's September 27th, 2023. I was eating my breakfast, drinking my morning coffee, and figured it's finally time that we talk about this whole Unity situation. And I've been on paternity leave the past 3 weeks. This situation has been transpiring over the past 2 weeks, and it has been a roller coaster. If you've been living under a rock the past 2 weeks, well, Unity decided it was a good idea to change their pricing model to make developers pay a whole lot more than they were before, in addition to what they were paying before. This obviously was met with a lot of backlash, to the point where they had to clarify on some things, and the people who were upset about it, which was basically the entire game development community, and not only the entire game development community, but the entire gaming community. Twitch streamers, their communities, game developers, just a wave of backlash that you can see kind of here. We're going to be going over all of this to where they're like, we want to acknowledge the confusion and frustration we heard, and we announced our new runtime fee policy, blah, blah, blah. And there's this whole collective that occurred. They finally, on September 22nd, 10 days after the initial announcement, and them kind of addressing some of the things where they tried to clarify but didn't actually address the real concerns, an open letter to our community. We are sorry. And then they decided this is actually what we're going to do. So we're not going to do what we had said before. We're going to do this. You're still worse off than you were 3 weeks ago, but better off than you were 2 weeks ago with our initial runtime fee announcement. We're going to talk about all this and what it means for game developers. This is going to be a wild one. How about we start where it all began? September 12th, 2023, Unity posted this blog post titled Unity Plan Pricing and Packaging Updates, where they announced their Unity runtime fee that would go into effect January 1st, 2024. And this would not affect 90% of developers based on what they said. It only affect the top 10%. So anyone on the lower two plans, Unity Personal and Unity Plus, who make $200,000 a year, so in the last 12 months, that's a threshold, and have 200,000 or more lifetime installs of their game. And then that threshold, both of those thresholds go up to $1 million for Unity Pro and Unity Enterprise. And just a quick disclaimer, just so people don't get confused. This is what was going to go into effect if the backlash didn't occur. They said, this is what we're doing. But then the backlash occurred, so then they backpedaled on this and are doing something different that we'll talk about later. So don't think this is what's actually happening now. It would have happened if there was no backlash, but it's not happening because there was. Just to clarify. But that's the overall idea of the pricing structure. So based on those thresholds, if you're under 200,000, you're clear. If you're on Unity Pro or Unity Enterprise and you're under $1 million, you're clear. But if you hit these thresholds in these plans, this is what you're faced with. For every single install on the Unity Personal and Unity Plus plan above these thresholds is 20 cents per install. So if you have 1 million installs in a year, that's $200,000 that you have to pay, whether the game is free or not. And you say, well, if it's free, how are we hitting that revenue threshold? In-app purchases. So they're not taking revenue from in-app purchases. They're not taking money when you make money, similar to what Unreal Engine said when all of this happened. They're like, we only make money when you make money. We do a royalty system. We take 5%, whatever. They're saying it doesn't matter. If you get 1 million installs and you make $200,000, well, guess what? Now you make $0 because 1 million installs cost you $200,000. So now you're screwed. That's basically what they're saying. Obviously, it would then incentivize you to upgrade to Unity Pro. So if you have, let's say $500,000 in revenue and you're on Personal or Plus, you probably just want to go ahead and pay, not probably, you definitely just want to go ahead and pay Unity Pro the $2,000 per seat, because that's going to be cheaper than trying to pay the 20 cents per install. So you're going to be paying 15 cents per install over the $1 million threshold. Well, if you're at $500,000, you're not even going to hit these thresholds, so you're chilling. You're still paying the Unity Pro, but if you're above, that's when you start paying these fees per install for however many monthly installs that you have, if the thresholds are met. So everything over 1 million or over 200,000, that's when you start paying for it. But even still, that can be a lot of money. For example, I don't know if y'all have heard of the YouTuber named Danny. He's a game developer. I think he's been featured on like Mr. Beast Gaming and stuff like that, but he's just a huge YouTuber in and of his own right. And he came out from the abyss after being gone for 2 years or something like that, as far as I know. I guess I owe Unity $5.6 million. Anyone got some spare change? And that is in reference to the fact that he has two very popular Unity games, Muck and Crab Game. And together, they have had over 28 million installs. So if you were to pay 20 cents per install for 28 million, that's 5.6 million. Now, he does clarify over here, it's partly a joke because it's not retroactive. This only starts in January of 2024. And then there's a download threshold. And then there's this, and then there's that. But if this actually were to happen next year, if this were to go into effect, this new Unity fee, he's still looking at $500,000. So let me just do the math for you real quick. Let's assume he's on Unity Pro, because if he's not and he has to pay this fees, that's just ridiculous. You're going to want to pay the $2,000 a seat Unity Pro, and then he will be paying these per install, everything over $1 million. So let's just assume that, he pays all of these. Let's just assume that we're considering it's only 2% per install for everything over. If you look at these actual numbers, that's actually more so 28.5 million. So minus the 1 million, that's 27.5 million times 2 cents per install, which again is still a little bit more because of these for the first million installs above $1 million. That's $550,000 that he would have had to pay, assuming that he has reached that $1 million in the past 12 months revenue in-app purchases, because these are free games. He's not making money from selling the games, lifetime free licenses, but he is making money from in-app purchases. I don't know how much money he makes. I'm not a pocket watcher, but that's the fact of the matter. If he has to pay these fees, that's still over $500,000 that he would have to pay. Quite a bit less than 5.6 million, but still way more, especially considering the fact that you're paying these fees anyway. You've been paying these fees anyway. Another example is very similar math to this. So I don't know if this is hypothetical or if this is this individual's actual experience. Make a game. Game is freemium, meaning it's free, then you have in-app purchases. Game makes $200,000 from in-app purchases after being installed 3 million times. Now owe Unity 20 cents per 2.8 million installs. That's 3 million minus the 200,000 threshold. That's $560,000. That's $360,000 more than we made, which is a lot. However, this math doesn't really work out. I guess the person didn't really look into it that much. The fact of the matter is, if you were in this situation, you're going to have to pay that $2,000 Unity Pro seat. And if you were hitting that and you made $200,000 in revenue, like it said right here, you don't have to pay any runtime fee. That's a bad example. But there are plenty of examples just like this, where you are forced to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars as an indie developer. You're making a lot of money, but you're paying more than what it actually should be because you're also paying for the seats themselves. It's a whole mess. Aggro Crab developers expressed their concerns, saying, hey, if these changes aren't rolled back, we're going to have to dip out on Unity. We don't want to do that because that's what we know is Unity. We're going to have to learn a whole new engine, but we're going to do that because you're forcing our hand. You need to reverse the latest in a string of short-sighted decisions that seem to prioritize shareholders over their product's actual users. Innersloth has always paid Unity appropriately for licenses and services we use. I'm not a discourse guy, but this is undue and will force my hand. We're paying all of these fees. How are you just going to slap these new fees on top of those old fees that we've already been paying for years? Same sentiment exactly right here. What, do we just rebuild my whole game in a new engine? I've been paying a small fortune in pro licenses to develop the game over several years. Seems kind of insane that Unity can just throw this out there on a whim. They should refund the lifetime license costs for everyone. If you buy our Unity game, please don't install it. That's because they're going to have to pay for every single install. So this is just crazy amounts of backlash, feedback, if you will, criticism of all of these changes in the pricing model because it does affect a lot of developers. Unity says, oh, it only affects 10% of the developers. Well, you said you have like 200 some odd thousand developers using the Unity engine. That's still 20 some odd thousand developers who this is going to affect, who have to pay all of these unforeseen expenses starting next year. It's just, I understand that companies need to make money, but why are you looking to make money at the expense of the developers who are why you make money? No developers, no money from the developers, no money from the ads that the developers put in their game from Unity or anything like that. That's not how this works. You're completely breaking the trust of the entire game development industry, and that's exactly what they're saying. What's funny here, and funny, ironic, whatever, is that it's a typical negotiating tactic. Start high, settle low. And that's effectively what they did that we'll get to. But what's even wilder about this is that these are supposed to be professionals. They're supposed to be the masterminds of business. But they misunderstood like such a simple concept in terms of negotiating. Nobody's going to buy your product if they can't trust you. And what happened here? You broke trust entirely. They may not see the repercussions here immediately. I mean, they're seeing the backlash. But in terms of finances, they may not see it immediately. But what will happen long term is once these big companies hop out of their current development life cycle that they're in right now to finish what they've established that they need to do within Unity, you know that many of them are going to say, screw Unity. We will save money by redeveloping our entire system, our entire game on a new engine. Go over to Unreal, go over to open source Godot, Game Maker, something. They may even be able to create their own engine and save money depending on how much money they're making. You see what I'm saying? And then they can start making money with the engine. That's a whole thing in and of itself, but just not a smart move. And with all of this initial backlash, I don't know if this happened after or before, whatever, but this is another post. Let me actually show you it. This is another post. Maybe posted on the same day, actually. I'm not 100% sure, but there are a few questions and concerns that they just simply weren't clear about overall, and they figured that they would address them. So highlighting some of the question answer pairs from this thread below for visibility. This is forum Unity, so there's a whole thread here of them talking about it. How are you going to collect installs? So how do you know? How do you know you're going to charge us 20 cents per install? Like, how are you going to collect those installs? Well, we leverage our own proprietary data model. Let me go like this. We believe it gives an accurate determination of the number of times the runtime is distributed for a given project. So we're not going to tell you because proprietary, and we're also not sure. That's the phrasing of we believe. Well, we believe that it's going to work this way. That's not a definitive statement right there. Instead of saying it gives an accurate determination of the number, we believe it gives an accurate determination of the number of times a runtime is distributed. It's not very confidence-inducing, especially for a company that just completely broke our trust. And then there's a handful of other questions. These questions right here, they changed their answer to. I think this one was added. Anyway, if a user reinstalls, re-downloads a game, will that count as multiple installs? You know what they initially said? I actually have Ludwig's video pulled up because he had it there initially before they made those adjustments on September 4th. This is the question right here. So if a user reinstalls or re-downloads a game or changes their hardware, will that count as multiple installs? Should be no, right? Yes, actually. The creator will need to pay for all future installs. The reason is that Unity doesn't receive in-player information, just aggregate data. Okay, I mean, I didn't consent to be given information back to Unity as an end user of a video game. But they changed that answer to, we are not going to charge a fee for reinstalls. The spirit of this program is and always has been to charge for the first install, and we have no desire to charge for the same person doing ongoing installs. So does that mean you're going to start collecting end user data in order to dictate if I've installed it multiple times or just once? How are you going to do that? And you're also contradicting this statement. We have no desire to charge for the same person doing ongoing installs. In your very next answer, do installs of the same game by the same user across multiple devices count as different installs? Yes, we treat it different. We treat different devices as different installs. So if I'm one user and I buy the game, and I'm logged in to whatever, Steam or whatever on my PC, on my laptop, on my Steam Deck, on wherever else I can play these games, you're telling me if I install it on all three of those, they have to pay for every single install? In what world does that make any sense? I'll answer. It doesn't. Not in this world. And then what about install bombing? They addressed this right here. I think this is a new Q&A that they added, not just updated, but added all together on September 14th. How will we approach fraudulent or abusive behavior that impacts the install count, like bombing or piracy? To clarify, what this means is, let's say a developer does something heinous, or nobody likes this developer, or what doesn't matter. We decide to start a campaign against this developer. We can get together 1,000 people. And again, they've already said, they've updated since, but they've already said we can't track the installs really. So you can get the game. Let's say it's free. Get the game, install it. For 1,000 people, 20 cents per install, that's $200. Well, what if we install it 10 times? Or what if there's 10,000 people that install it 10 times each? You're able to install. 10,000 people, 10 times, that's 100,000 installs, $20,000 at 20 cents per install. That's what install bombing is. So they say we won't count fraudulent installs or install bombing either. As part of our model, we are creating solutions to address the problem of double counting reinstallations. How? They're not saying how. Again, they said we don't collect end user data. So how are you going to add that as a part of your model where you create solutions to address the problem of double counting reinstallations? You say everything's proprietary. You say we believe that we can do this. You say we're going to do this, creating solutions as part of our model. We can't trust you. We can't trust you to do that. So how does it make any sense? And then what about installs that are offline? Do you count those as well? Because they're in, like you download it, but then you install, like those are offline. How does that work? I'm not sure. I don't think they're sure either, in all honesty. And then there's a whole lot of other questions and answers and whatnot going on here, but those are the main ones that I wanted to address. All right, so you're paying to use the Unity software if you're making over a certain amount of money. Unity personally, you can use at the time of that announcement up to $100,000 in revenue. Anything above that, you would have to upgrade to Plus or Pro or Enterprise. They also are trying to make money now from the runtime fee. I'm sure they have other revenue streams that I don't know about, but one that I do know about is ads. So with Unity, what you're able to do is place ads in your game through Unity. Unity gets a cut. It's just like the YouTube model. The ad that you watch before this video, unless you have premium or something, that YouTube gets a cut, I get a cut. That's how it works. With the Unity ads on the video games, the developer gets a cut, Unity gets a cut. That's how it works. So, what happened was UnitedGameDevs.com became a thing. I think it was initially born with this. I don't know if there's anything about this before, but regardless. This happened, join the collective, support the gaming community. Basically, they created a collective letter from game development companies turning off all Iron Source and Unity ads monetization until new conditions are reviewed. So they are putting their money where their mouth is. These developers are. They're pulling money. They're pulling ads out of their game, which is pulling money out of their pocket because if they know if they get enough people, hence 1,069 companies and indie devs who have signed this letter, they know that that's going to be a big hit to Unity's revenue stream. The entire point of Unity putting in this runtime fee policy is to increase the revenue, right? So if they do this, these developers who use Unity pull money out of Unity's pocket. They're like, hold on now. We did this whole entire thing in order to make more money. And we know that wasn't going to happen until January, but in the meantime, we're losing money because they're pulling all of the ads. Putting their money where their mouth is, respect. There's a whole entire list. So if you ever see any of these names, say thank you. There's a lot more names, many more. See all. Okay. I'm scrolling just as fast as like Star Wars at the end of the movie. You can't really read any of them, but they're there. And you should go through and maybe read a couple so you get a full understanding and you can appreciate. I'm not going to read this whole entire letter because I gave you the overall gist of things. That's also more pressure that was put on Unity, including the backlash. Including people saying, hey, this is not okay. Not just developers, but gamers as well. Saying, hey, we're going to have to leave Unity. For who, though? That's the next topic. And what's interesting is that this is not that much different than other things going on in effectively the same industry, similar industry. With, let's use Apple, for example. Apple across the board, no thresholds, nothing like that. For everything that goes through the App Store, they get 30%. If you sell your app for $5, they get 30%. If your app is free, and you have in-app purchases, everything that's purchased in-app through the app, they get 30%. They also don't allow you to tell users of the app to purchase something online to circumnavigate the 30%, as we have seen with the whole Epic Games situation with Apple. If you don't know about that, that's a whole situation in and of itself, but also has to do with this industry as well, because Epic Games, Fortnite, Unreal Engine, it's all that. So there are similar things going on, but there's a big difference. Apple and Unity are different. Apple is able to do that because they have a monopoly. Is that legal? Absolutely not. But do they have enough money and influence in politics to kind of circumnavigate that whole, monopoly being a legal thing? Yeah, they kind of do. And in order to do something like Unity is trying to implement, you need to have one of two things. One is a vastly superior product to your competitors. Or two, a monopoly. And guess what, Unity? You have neither. You're not vastly superior to your main competitor, Unreal. And you always have open source Godot out there lurking and pulling in a lot of developers in its own right. And Unreal knows this. Unreal, I don't know what this guy's position is with Unreal. Unreal Engine Evangelist at Epic Games. I don't know what that means. But what he said is, we only succeed when you succeed. Our 5% royalty model only kicks in after your first $1 million in gross revenue, meaning that if you make $1,000,001, you owe us 5 cents. And that is per title. That's actually a nice touch. Also, revenue generated from the Epic Games Store will be excluded from that 5% royalty. And when was this posted? The same exact day that Unity announced their new pricing model. And let's just say that wasn't exactly an accident. But that's not the most that they can do. Now, when it comes to video games, I don't know how this works exactly. But what they need to figure out how to do is make the transition from Unity. And when I say they, I don't just mean Unreal. I mean Godot, Game Maker, whomever else. They need to make it as seamless to transition from Unity to their engine. This is exactly what GitHub did with Bitbucket Server, because Atlassian is discontinuing support for Bitbucket Server starting in, I think, early 2024. So what GitHub did was create a tool to easily migrate everything over from Bitbucket Server to GitHub. Similar thing happened with, who did we just talk about in the recent Dev Notes newsletter? Bun. Bun made it very easy for developers to transition from Node.js to Bun. I know you can't see the screen right now. This is actually pulling from the script of the Bun video that we're uploading on the Dev Notes YouTube channel. If you don't know about that, I'll leave a link in the description. I don't mean to plug the Dev Notes newsletter or the YouTube channel right now, but it's applicable to where I'm referencing this. They made it easier for developers to transition from Node.js to Bun without having to rewrite large portions of their code base. So they just made it as seamless and simple as possible to be able to transition away from your competitor effectively. From Node.js to Bun, from Bitbucket to GitHub. That's what Unreal, Godot, these game engines need to do. Again, if it's possible, I understand it's a little bit different than this. It's a little bit more complex, more complicated. I do understand that much, but if they can figure out a way to go about it and just make it as easy as possible, it'll be a game changer. It'll be great business for them, more so than just saying, hey, we only take 5% royalties above $1 million. That's a good start, but just make it easy for me to use your product. That's it. And speaking of the DevNotes newsletter, this was in today's issue. Unity Dev Group dissolves after 13 years. Boston Unity Group, who would have like monthly gatherings for Unity developers, they were the first official Unity user group in the world, announced its dissolution after 13 years due to a loss of trust in the company. And the group described the initial terms, the pricing model, runtime fee policy, as unthinkably hostile, and stated that even after Unity rescinded some of the most controversial changes, the revised pricing model still disproportionately affects indie studios in their community. So what is that revised pricing model, you ask? Well, It is, well, it kind of came in the form of this, an open letter to our community on September 22nd, 2023, where Mark Whitten, the leader of Unity Create, in an interview, I saw him say he didn't even know that Unity had a GitHub repository, period, which is a little bit odd for the president of Unity Create, which includes the Unity engine and editor teams anyway. And they say, I am sorry. All of it's right here, but it's better laid out right here. The key updates. So this is the revised pricing model from the runtime fee initially to this one. Unity Personal, so the free plan, has no runtime fee. Splash screen is optional. So the made with Unity, you can remove that in the free plan. This is them like giving you a little bit like, sorry, here, take this. I think they just dissolved Unity Plus altogether. So the Unity Personal plan will remain free, and there will be no runtime fees for games built with a plan. We will be increasing an annual revenue and funding limit from $100,000 to $200,000, and we will remove the requirement to use the Made with Unity splash screen. And this is starting with the LTS version releasing in 2024, currently referred to as the 2023 LTS or later. So they are saying you don't have to use the Made with Unity splash screen anymore. And oh, by the way, you can still use this free plan if it is in fact free. I actually haven't confirmed that. I think it's free. The free plan, instead of up to $100,000 in revenue, $200,000 in revenue. Okay, you forgive us for everything? Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. They also say the runtime fee is forward-looking. The runtime fee does not apply to any games created with any currently supported Unity versions. So anything before that LTS version released in 2024, if you stay on those Unity platforms, and I think they are going to keep LTS versions that aren't the 2023 LTS. It only applies to games created with or upgraded to the LTS version releasing in 2024. So don't upgrade. Editor terms. We will make sure that you can stay on the terms applicable for the version of Unity you are using as long as you keep using that version. And here's the actual fee. So this is them saving face basically. And the actual fee here, runtime fee, self-reported. So the amount of revenue you make is self-reported. On a monthly basis, you have a choice of the lesser of 2.5% revenue share or the calculated amount based on the unique initial engagements. Both your initial engagements and your revenue are self-reported from data you already have available. You will always be billed the lesser amount. There actually is a little bit more information over here. So no game with less than $1 million in trailing 12-month revenue will be subject to the fee. So this is actually interesting. It's not as good as it was before the initial pricing model announcement. It's a whole lot better than the initial pricing model announcement. But based on this statement, anything above $1 million is 2.5% or the lesser calculated amount. That, in theory, is actually better than what Unreal Engine has right here, which is at 5%. Royalty. Or am I misunderstanding this? Revenue share, royalty. The only difference here is I believe it's free to use Unreal Engine, and in the alternative, you'll be having to pay $2,000 per seat for Unity Pro. So depending on your development team, depending on a handful of things, Unity still may be at a better price point than Unreal right now. But there's one thing that you may want to consider. Well, it's the simple fact that Unity will just try this again in 3 years. They calculated just how much money they were going to make using the previous pricing model, and that's what they have in their head. Now they're saying, okay, instead of making this much in revenue because of all the backlash, we're going to make this much in revenue. It's still more than what we were making before, but it's still not as much as what we had hoped. Let's let this die out. Let's let everyone calm down a little bit, forget about this hopefully, and then in 2, 3, 5 years' time, we're just going to try this again. So this is really what it means for developers. Instead of just focusing on what engine is the best use case or what engine you like to use the best or how much money you can use with each engine based on their pricing model, you have to take into consideration what company is backing the engine and see if you can trust them. Full trust, I mean, you kind of have to fully trust. Actually fully trusting, no, but you kind of have to because you're putting all your eggs in that basket. You're not going to use 3 different engines and create the same game in 3 different engines. That's just a waste of time, and that's kind of silly, right? Right? I think so. But you're going to have to figure out, like, am I going to stick with Unity? I mean, their runtime fee self-reported is worse than it was 3 years ago, but is it better than what Unreal is right now because they're at a 5% over $1 million and this is at 2.5% revenue share over $1 million? I don't know. And if I do go over to Unreal, which is Unity's main competitor, are they going to do something similar to what Unity did? My camera died, but we're back. Is Unreal going to do something similar to what Unity just did? After all of this, obviously not, because they saw the backlash. But what if the backlash didn't happen? What if Unity announced their pricing model? Nobody really minded. Maybe a couple little whispers here and there. Oh, I don't like this. I don't like that. Maybe a couple developers leaving Unity to go to Unreal or Godot. What would what would have Unreal done? Would they have looked at that and been like, huh, there really was no risk for them increasing their pricing model and making more revenue? How about we try something like that? Would they have done that? I don't know. You don't know. I don't think we'll never know, because that's an alternate timeline. But it's something that they could do in the future because they have the control. Just like with me on YouTube. YouTube could say, hey, we're going to start taking 80% of the revenue from the ads instead of 45% or 55% or whatever they're at right now. And now you only get 20%. They're in charge. I'm on their platform. What can I really do about that? There will be an outcry. You've seen the same thing happen with Twitch. They've tried to charge this and charge that and make money here and run all these ads, and people don't really like it that much. So people are actually leaving Twitch. There's much more competition for Twitch than there is for YouTube, particularly in the ability to make ad revenue from like running the ads, not sponsorships. So that's kind of the game you play when you have to partner up with these big companies. None of y'all are going to be watching me if I whip up my own website and start posting all of these. And even so, then Amazon can come after me because I'm doing it on Amazon Web Services, or I'm doing it on Linode, or I'm doing it here. I'd have to have a server running back here all the time in order to be truly independent like Web 1.0. But I'm not going to do that. You just have to play the game. And when you play the game, you have to make the most strategic decisions of who you partner with, of what platform you're on what game engine you use. That, my friends, is the Unity situation in a nutshell. Did I miss this and miss that and leave out this and leave out that? I'm sure I did. There's a lot that has transpired over the past few weeks, but that is the overall gist. If I missed something important, you let me know. Did I forget about the CEOs or the CEO that came from EA over to Unity? Is he the one that made the decision? I don't know. I don't know enough about that story to really talk on it. Try to talk about what I know. What about all of the execs that dumped a lot of stock, a lot of Unity stock before this announcement was made? Was that a coincidence, or was that actually kind of strategic on their part, which in turn would be insider trading? I'm not making any claims. Don't sue me. I'm just pondering, if you will. So I'm sure there are a few things like that I missed out on that maybe I don't know enough about, or I just simply didn't see. Y'all let me know down in the comment section. Discuss this. I'll be down there discussing it as well, because this is not just in the game development industry, but can ripple throughout the entire development industry as a whole, and into other industries as well. So I figured I wanted to talk about it, talk on it. Somebody commented on Dev Notes that I should talk on it, so that's what I'm doing here. Hope y'all enjoyed the video. Like it, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. Goodbye.